Hello there, you're watching Debrief on CNN News 18. I'm Maha Siddiqui. The COVID-19 pandemic is raging on in the country. An alarming number of cases, over 160,000 were reported in the last 24 hours. And what's worse is that India's fatality rate is also rising. The infrastructure is now overburdened, with heartbreaking pictures emerging of patients squatting on the floors in hospitals due to want of beds. But there seems to be little value placed on life. No lessons seem to have been learned. In fact, there is blatant violation of COVID-appropriate behavior on flagrant display. From political rallies in all of the last month in the 4 states and 1 union territory, and still continuing in Bengal, and religious congregation now in Uttarakhand. While you and I are not allowed to even drive alone in a car without a mask, the same doesn't apply here, that now threaten to become super spreaders. On Debrief today, we tell you what it could cost the nation in terms of life and livelihood. First, supporters of political parties crowding lanes and by-lanes as their political leaders promise to improve their lives in election campaigns. Speech after speech, the voters hear it and believe it, so much so that they also probably think COVID doesn't exist. What else explains the gay abandon with which they throng these crowded rallies without masks, willing to be ill themselves and be carriers of the coronavirus that can impact their families, aged parents and friends? Have the election rallies set a bad example in these tough times, ruining the message, Dawai bhi, Kadai bhi? It's the festival of democracy. In the largest democracy in the world. There's color, there's singing and dancing, there's sloganeering and fervor. But unknown to all these people, there's also a silent killer stalking amid them, getting stronger with each passing day.
One thing is common to almost all rallies such as this, that there is little consciousness, awareness about the rising COVID cases in the country, including here in West Bengal. Look at this rally. Do you see any kind of distance maintaining as per COVID protocols? Certainly not. There is no sufficient distance that is being maintained by the workers of this particular rally for COVID. And you can see a significant number of people actually not having masks in a right way. So, of course, this is a problem.
Looking at these visuals, you may even forget that COVID ever was a problem.
আমরা সচেতন অবশ্যই আছি, কিন্তু বুঝতেই পারছেন প্রচণ্ড গরম এবং জলের আছে অবশ্যই সাধারণত বজায় অবশ্যই রাখছি এবং ডিস্টেন্স যতটুকু পারা যায় যতটুকু মেনটেন অবশ্যই করছি এবং দেখা যাক কতদূর কি করা যায়।
মিস্টেক হয়ে গেছে, কিন্তু এতটাই এক্সাইটেড পার্টির জন্য মানে ভুলে গেছি।
In the midst of the battle for Bengal, no Neta here wants to be COVID aware, because each political party wants to flaunt the crowds and supporters. In an electoral system where people often cast their vote just on the face value of their leaders, no Neta wants to be seen with a mask.
इलेक्शन की जो मतलब महल जो है ना, उसमें ये दोनों का संतुलन करना बहुत कष्ट हो रहा है। मैं मास्क लेके ही घूम रहा हूँ कि जितने भी जगह हैं वो हम लोग थोड़ा कोशिश कर रहे हैं, लेकिन कैंडिडेट का मुंह अगर नहीं देख पाएंगे तो लोगों का प्रॉब्लम हो जाएगा। एक तो देखिए, उसके बात नहीं करने के लिए वो लोग स्पेस छोड़ रहे हैं कि मैं लोगों के सामने जाऊं, और उसके बाद ये है अगर मुंह ना देख पाए तो क्या करेंगे हम लोग।
In fact, many Netas have shown that they are willing to even risk getting COVID as long as they are not hindered in reaching out to people. From Sukhbir Badal to Sanjeev Balyan, Jitin Prasad to Biplab Deb. Bihar was the first state to see elections amid a pandemic, and many fell ill due to the virus. but advisories on COVID protocol during campaigning have clearly not been paid heed to during the 5 elections this summer. And while the show of people power must go on, the ugly truth remains. The netas who charm their way to your vote probably have the resources to survive getting infected. But can the same be said about those who vote for the netas?
Very strict guidelines have been imposed by the Election Commission as far as political rallies goes in the state of West Bengal. But are our politicians following it? No. You can see many of them doing road shows, mixing around with the crowds. Neither the crowds are wearing masks, nor many of them are wearing masks. This happened exactly during the time of Bihar elections as well. It's a horrific situation, which is something which we all need to avoid. With Debashish in Kolkata, Pallavi Ghosh.
The ongoing Mahakumbh in Uttarakhand's Haridwar has become another cause of concern. On the day of Shahi Snan today, all claims of strict COVID protocol were sent for a toss as a sea of humanity was seen at Har Ki Pauri and other ghats. Arun Dhanta takes a dip into why faith has been placed above the fight against the pandemic.
Under normal circumstances, these visuals of devotees jostling with each other, flooding the ghats at Har Ki Pauri for a holy dip in the river Ganga, would have spoken of the religious fervour and their devotion. Today, during a pandemic, they also speak of our carelessness. Authorities have put up their hands, saying that it is simply impossible to ensure that COVID protocols are followed with such massive crowds.
हम लोगों ने पूरा प्रयास किया है कि कोविड के अनुरूप बिहेवियर हो सभी लोगों का और जहां तक संभव हो सके उतना गाइडलाइन का पालन कराया जा सके। आज जो पीक डे है तो आज मेरे लिए बहुत ज़्यादा पालन कराया जाना संभव नहीं, किंतु अपनी ओर से पुलिस ने बेस्ट एफर्ट्स किए हैं और हमने ये भी कोशिश की कि स्थानीय लोगों को और श्रद्धालुओं को दोनों को कम से कम असुविधा हो।
As lakhs of devotees continue to reach Haridwar from different states, there's also an increasing doubt of the implementation of the government order making a COVID negative certificate a must for visitors coming from other states. Now, while normal pilgrims are being checked, for many sadhus and those in akhadas, the administration has simply not been strict enough.
The SOPs of COVID-19 is going for a toss, and that's very, very apparent on the visuals. I'll request my camera person to just pan around and show the visuals here at the Prem Nagar Ghat. These people here, they are no longer maintaining social distancing, not at all wearing masks, and this has been one of the biggest concerns of the authorities. In fact, we had spoken to the Kumbh Mela in charge here. He was also saying that it's not possible practically on their part to issue challans to all these people, since there's going to be a large congregation of people from different parts.
हम अपनी सुरक्षा मास्क लगा के सब डिस्टेंस बना के दूरी बना के आए हैं। श्रद्धा भी हमारे साथ है। थोड़ा सा कुंभ की कोरोना का तो है, तो डर है, भय ऐसा नहीं है, और हमें अपनी सुरक्षा करनी भी चाहिए। औरों को भी समझाना चाहिए इसके बारे में कि अपने तरफ से पूरी कोशिश करें। वो जो भी गाइडलाइन दी गई है उसका फॉलो करना चाहिए।
देखिए, श्रद्धा एक बड़ी चीज़ है। श्रद्धा जब आदमी के मन में होती है और एक मन में एक विश्वास होता है, तो ये कोरोना वगैरह और जितनी भी बीमारी होती है सब पीछे रह जाती है।
क्राउडिंग की वजह से ज़्यादा चांसेस हो जाते हैं कोरोना फैलने के। ऐसे में इस घाट ढेर सारे बनाए गए हैं ताकि क्राउडिंग कम हो।
जो SOPs और जो गाइडलाइंस है लोगों से स्ट्रिक्टली फॉलो करा रहे हैं, सो दैट कि हमें नेग्लिजिबल बहुत कम चांस हो कि कोविड होने से।
With at least 3 mega snans still to go, fear looms large if the biggest religious event can also turn out to be the biggest virus spreader. A balance needs to be struck between faith and the fight against the coronavirus pandemic. The question is, does the Uttarakhand government have the intent to put health above faith? With Pranchu Mishra and Arun Dhanta in Haridwar, Bureau Report, CNN News 18.
And making a trip for holy purposes is not the only reason people are travelling, spreading around the virus. Fearing another lockdown due to the second wave, some migrant workers are making their way back to their villages. Some who hail from Uttar Pradesh are going back to vote in panchayat elections, as they mostly do. So rural India, that was COVID safe in the first wave, might become vulnerable too. And that certainly could be bad news.
नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने जो न्यू इंडिया और आत्मनिर्भर भारत की कल्पना दी है.
Atmanirbharta may be the buzzword of the government in post-COVID times.
Building a Atmanirbhar Bharat.
But the phrase has taken a different meaning for these migrants, whose worst fear is another lockdown and have taken matters into their own hands. Luggage and some cash in hand, they have started moving back from industrial centres and cities to their native villages.
We are right now outside the Lokmanya Tilak terminus station, which has a large number of crowds that has gathered, although in a scattered pattern. There are these crowds that have gathered here, mostly people, migrant labourers who along with their families have decided to return back to their cities, anticipating there could be stricter curbs that could be imposed in the city of Mumbai.
घर जाने में क्या समस्या आ रही है?
हमको टिकट नहीं मिल रहा है, जाने के लिए अंदर नहीं जाने दे रहे हैं, टिकट चाहिए.
It's a mantra of self-reliance for them. The conundrum of choosing between livelihood and health is a gamble that they are willing to take, even if it means risking their health and that of their loved ones.
महाराष्ट्र में बहुत ख़राब है हालात. बोला गया था पहले दिन नाइट कर्फ्यू लगेगा 15 दिन का, फिर इसके बाद बोला गया कि शनिवार संडे फुल लॉकडाउन रहेगा, संपूर्ण लॉकडाउन रहेगा. फिर इसके बाद बोला गया अचानक से पुलिस वाले ने 6 तारीख को आके दुकानें सब बंद कराना चालू कर दिए.
काम धंधा के लिए बहुत परेशानी था, काम नहीं था, बराबर बैठ के रहने से कोई फायदा नहीं है. उसी की वजह से आदमी सब अपना घर चलाए हैं.
तो आप देख सकते हैं कि ये वो लोग हैं जो बॉम्बे से इस लोकमान्य तिलक से बिहार आ रहे हैं और फिलहाल ये स्टेशन जो ट्रेन है बक्सर रेलवे स्टेशन पर रुकी है और लोग अब यहाँ से पटना के लिए रवाना हो रहे हैं.
Long queues and trains packed to the rafters, seen at railway stations in Delhi and Mumbai, were a familiar sight for our reporters when they decided to find out the truth.
I'm at New Delhi railway station and just see the crowd, just see the number of people who still continue to not wear a mask. There's hardly any social distancing. This huge footfall at the railway station can also be attributed to migrant workers going back to their homes, fearing another lockdown.
There is a lot of concern as far as the migrants are concerned. In Mumbai, they are not having the jobs that they used to, and of course, when it comes to going back home, they are finding it difficult because they don't have reservation, they don't have tickets, and they are not allowed in these circumstances to travel by train if they don't have a valid ticket, and that is adding to their problems.
Barely having recovered from the economic consequences of the first lockdown, migrant workers are willing to take the risk of travelling 100 kilometers, despite the threats of these trains becoming super spreaders.
कहाँ से आ रही हैं आप? मुंबई से आ रही हैं. आपके साथ कितने जन हैं? 5-6 जन हैं, लेकिन किसी का भी स्क्रीनिंग नहीं हुआ. तो साफ तौर पे आपने देखा कि यात्रियों का कहना है कि कोई स्क्रीनिंग नहीं हुई और वे अब अपने गांव घर तक जाएंगे.
Every passenger is supposed to be screened for COVID before and after boarding. But few, if any, are getting tested. There is zero social distancing as travellers press into other travellers, carrying the virus into distant villages and regions that will only contribute to more cases. Sure, the vaccines are here, but this is no time to be complacent. Mass movement poses the risk of turning super spreaders immediately. Isn't it time then for local authorities to reach out to migrant workers and build confidence in them to stay put? Only then can we really dream of winning the fight against COVID, once and for all. Bureau Report, CNN News 18.
And amidst all these fears, there's a clamour for more vaccines as the only possible panacea in the current scenario. But that fight too is an uphill task for the moment as India and South Africa push the World Trade Organization for a patent waiver in these extraordinary times, there is resistance from the richer nations. Joining me now, Professor Arjun Jaidev, Professor of Economics at the Azim Premji University, who will help us understand the global pharma politics over the pandemic, and Dr. Sanjeev Bagai, Chairman of Nephron Clinic, is also joining us here. Professor Arjun Jaidev, I want to come to you first, but before I get into the fight at the WTO, I want to understand from you the possible economic fallout of the second wave of COVID in India.
Well, thanks for having me on. Again, it's not going to be very clear right at the outset what the economic fallout is. We're still at the early part of the second wave. It seems clear that we're not going to go for lockdown in the same way, but there will be costs in one way or the other to several of the organizations and institutional firms that have just restarted their businesses, as it were. So while it's too early to tell, there will certainly be a negative fallout from this.
Dr. Bagai, how do we ensure that these events that we've just spoken about do not become super spreaders? Is there still any way out?
Good evening, Mark.
Good evening.
Good evening. I think it's important to understand that neither religion nor any politics or any social event can actually save India from the COVID second surge, which we are seeing right in front of our eyes pan out. It's only science and common sense which can save us, but unfortunately both these vital ingredients have been run underneath the wheels of simple things of stupidity. I mean, we have actually scored a self-goal. 15 months of hard work and trying to save precious lives is practically going wasted. These are super spreader events. Make no mistake about it. The cycle of COVID runs from 15 to 17 days, and at least 2 or 3 cycles run in terms of transmission. A lot of these people, unfortunately, are asymptomatic carriers. Even if you test negative, how on earth are you going to do contact tracing for an unknown crowd which is crossing 2 million? That's more than 20 lakhs in one day. It's like finding a needle in a haystack, and this is spread like binary fission. A lot of these are middle-aged to elderlies with comorbid, but now in the second wave, we are seeing the younger lot come in, again with comorbidities. The two most independent factors are obesity, hypertension, and coronary artery disease, which actually escalated the mortality almost double.
Right.
So we are in the thick of it. The hospitals are being stretched, the infrastructure is being stretched, but so the super spreader events have religious overtones. What can be done?
Professor Jaidev, I'll take that point that Dr. Bagai made about the health infrastructure struggling at the moment. Are there any estimates for the next few months on how things should be ramped up as far as infrastructure is concerned to save lives?
So, again, this is something where I think we've had many war plans, as it were, to scale up in different ways. Again, I don't think people really took seriously how sharply and how quickly this particular COVID wave would spread. And to that extent, we are going to see things falling behind now, especially the concerns around whether vaccines are being produced fast enough.
Yes.
That's, I think, one of the most concerning bits of information, and I'm hoping that we will be able to ramp up production to meet that, because that really is both having the vaccine production rollout and being able to actually implement it is going to be critical in the months going forward.
But we are running out of vaccines as well as some critical medicines as well. The same country, that is India, had extended a helping hand to other nations, Professor Jaidev, when the first wave hit the world. Should we be expecting reciprocity at this point? And here I'd also want your comments on the fight at the World Trade Organization.
Thanks very much again for this question. So, I think it's, to go back a little bit, COVID is possibly the first global event that we've actually seen. And while 1 year after it's really started, we've seen all these vaccines. It's quite incredible when you think scientific advancement has really been something quite extraordinary. But our systems of management globally of knowledge and health are weak and counterproductive. I'd even say they're probably best described as unjust and incompetent. And let's start with this whole question of patent rights, which you were pointing to. Right from the outset, became very clear that it was hindering the fight against COVID. From early days, if you remember, the N95 masks were a concern, then treatments like remdesivir. So it's not only a vaccine issue. And this was the basis of the original call last year for the COVID technology access pool. And this was rebuffed despite a widespread support. It was rebuffed by the advanced countries. And it's hard to imagine why this should be the case, because such technologies for public health have massive positive spillover benefits. Moving now to vaccines, I think the system is even more inefficient when one considers the fact that many companies across the world receive significant subsidies for vaccines. Estimates range for about $100 billion. And in some cases, the entire cost, for Moderna, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, was paid for by a public set of monies. And in such a situation, the case for having patent rights in order to allow for innovation completely disappears. And so the debate now has moved, if you will, to saying actually that it's not IP which is the restriction, it's the ability to produce, and manufacturing capacities. But remember, 8 months ago, that did not exist in developed economies. People like the Moderna chief chemists say that it takes about 3 or 4 months to actually set up these factories. So what we should have had is a massive transfer of technology to places which could actually do this, a completely open access to technology of all sorts, and ramping up production on a sort of global war scale. That has not happened, and it's still not happening because of these limitations. And unfortunately, despite India and South Africa making the case in the WTO and so on, despite some better noises from the Biden administration, we're not really seeing much movement.
Dr. Bagai, as a doctor yourself, when you're seeing so much of mayhem around you, are you disappointed that this is what is happening at the global level?
I'm disappointed on two fronts. One is, I think India has played a huge part of its honoring its commitment towards global collaboration in providing vaccines to more than 40 or 50 odd countries. Almost 70% of what India has used domestically has been actually exported. And that's important so that there is equitable distribution of vaccines, and the less fortunate countries who do not have the capacity start vaccinating their citizens. And if you don't do that, no one is safe till everyone is safe.
Absolutely.
The mutants will rampage overseas and it will cross the borders and come back into India to haunt us. What I'm really disappointed here within is that you cannot have farmer strikes, you cannot have political rallies, you cannot have religious congregations. What sense does it make? What is the cost for Indian life? There are very, very important issues to address, apart from the lack of public health care, but I think the real leaders should set an example. And even now, if we draw a line and pull socks up, it's going to take a better part of 1 month, because that's the transmission cycles of 2 or 3 runs. And the peak is yet to come.
Yes. Mid-April is expected to be the peaking time, around 16th to 17th April, I understand. Dr. Bagai and Professor Jaidev, both of you, many thanks for joining us here on this show. We're taking a very quick break now. Up next, is the world leadership to blame for the seemingly endless cycle of the pandemic? Up next, the mess in Brazil and who's responsible?